Imagine wanting to find a base in Minecraft so badly that you were willing to commit a crime against your best friend in real life just to find it. It sounds completely ridiculous, but over the past week, on the oldest anarchy server in Minecraft, this actually happened. Avalysium, one of the largest and most beautiful cities on the entire server, has finally fallen, all because one person went too far, going beyond the limits of decency even for a 2v2t player. Considering the challenges that were overcome for this base to even exist, the sudden griefing is even more of a shock. So what happened? Why is the fall of Avalysium considered so shocking in a community where bases are griefed all the time? Well, the method of how the coordinates were stolen has never happened before, especially to such a high-profile base. I've been given permission by all the base members to tell you the story of the rise and fall of Avalysium, and how on a server with no rules, you must prepare for any scenario, no matter how unlikely. I love being able to bring these stories to you, so if you consider hitting that subscribe button, you're a legend. Now then, it all started last year in 2020. There was a player named Noah3J who was the leader of a group of builders called Avalysium. One night, while stealing items from a stash, he was accidentally discovered by the stash's owner, Carl, who was the leader of a different group of builders called Elysium. Despite this awkward first encounter, the two actually became friends. They noticed the similarities between their groups, and eventually, Noah suggested to Carl that they start a joint base together where both groups could build. Elysium had access to a powerful item dupe that wasn't public, so together with Avalysium, they could build anything they wanted. It just so happened that around this time, both groups had their main bases destroyed, and since all of them were now homeless, it made sense to come together to rebuild. They would call the new base Avalysium, which was a combination of what both groups had called themselves. A location was chosen and both groups started making the journey. But the decision to merge was not well received by everyone. Two of the lower ranking members of Avalysium, Ionar and Dr. Beardstash, strongly disliked Elysium. They wanted to steal the item dupe method for themselves and planned to abandon both groups once they had it. They kept this motive a secret and quietly made their way to the build site. Once both groups had arrived with a surplus of building materials, Elysium members taught the Avalysians how to perform the dupe. It required a specific hack client. One of the base members, Redstoner, actually put his computer in his freezer to prevent it from overheating, as he was duping on 5 Minecraft accounts at the same time. As soon as they had it, Ionar and Dr. Beardstash left the group. Word quickly spread that the pair were planning to grief Avalysium's material stashes, which would prevent the entire base from being built. It was decided that all materials would be transported to a different build location, far away from the first. Eventually, both groups settled in a jungle biome, and on October 22nd, 2020, construction began on the base's first major build. After clearing out much of the jungle, the main hall was completed. It wasn't just pretty to look at, it was also one of the largest and most efficient item sorters ever built on 2v2t. It held approximately 2,400 double chests of items. Designed by Elijah204, the hall also included automatic anvil replacers, EXP dispensers, an auto sorter for empty shulker boxes, and a shopping cart system for queuing large amounts of shulkers that couldn't fit in one inventory. It also contained pearl suspenders that would allow members to teleport to the base from any location on the server. This main hall, in addition to having an item dupe, essentially gave the builders as many materials as they desired. For a builder, it was a dream come true. From here, the layout of the city was planned and construction really started coming along, especially with so many famous and talented builders in the ranks of Avalysium. They had Marcus and Xapamaa, who had previously founded the Monastery, a base that had survived for 8 years on 2v2t. They also had recruited other notable members of the community. You may recognize some of them from my previous videos. As the weeks went by, the number of accounts arriving at the base grew larger. Members often shared accounts so they could play at the base without having to buy priority queue. During construction, base leader Carl had been streaming on YouTube in which he accidentally revealed some of his waypoints. A few days later, Univercius, a notable player in his own right, showed up at the base unexpectedly. It turns out he had been watching Carl's stream and actually used trigonometry to determine the base's location based on the leaked waypoints. Luckily, he wanted to join Avalysium and not grief it. But Univercius was not the most shocking visitor that they would receive. One evening, many of the base members had gathered in the main hall. Suddenly, they found themselves kicked off the server without warning. When they tried to log back in, they were waiting in the server's regular queue. Their priority queue had been removed. They then realized what had actually happened. Because they were all logged in at the same time and were within range of the item sorter, it had caused enough lag for the server to think that it was a lag machine, and their accounts were automatically stripped of priority queue. This is a common punishment for people that build lag machines and make the server unplayable. When they were finally able to get back in, they found that the server's admin, Housemaster, was actually visiting the base. He determined that queue removal was a mistake, as the server had wrongly identified their sorter as a lag machine. Their priority access was returned, and they could breathe easy again. From here, construction of a nether hub was started and finished in less than 48 hours, which was very impressive. A giant volcano was being made that would eventually contain 200,000 blocks. Each section of the base had a theme that was similar to actual locations in the real world. There was an Amsterdam district, an Italian district, a Greek district, and the list goes on. A Grand Central Station similar to the one in the real New York City was also being planned. By April of this year, the base had become much larger than anyone had anticipated and contained many hidden secret areas. Everything was going according to plan. Despite the initial group tensions, the base had already lasted almost 6 months. A very impressive lifespan considering all the challenges that had been overcome. But of course, this is 2B2T. Anything that can go wrong eventually will go wrong. Out of nowhere, a member of the base, Bard, had his Discord account hacked into by an unknown person. They had full access and even started spending funds that the account had access to. Bard had to use an alt account just to warn his basemates that he had been compromised, but it was already too late. The coordinates to Avalysium had been obtained. It was most unusual. Bard was probably one of the most careful when it came to account security. He never used shady clients or any other programs that could token log him. How did his account get hacked? While he began investigating, the base members knew being griefed was not a question of if, but rather when. On April 16th, 2021, at dawn, a group of griefers named the BSB rolled up on the base. They started laying down TNT with absolutely no warning. By midday, Avalysium was a crater. 6 months of work down the drain. The base members accepted that this was going to happen eventually, but the question still remained. How did Bard's Discord account get hacked even though he was always careful? Well, buckle up, because this is where the block game drama turns into an actual real-life betrayal. Just like the last time I discussed an actual crime being committed in relation to the anarchy community, I will not be naming the individual responsible, because when you stoop to the absolute lowest levels, you don't deserve the clout from a FitMC video. It turns out that one of Bard's best friends in real life also happened to be a 2B2T player. Bard would often discuss Avalysium with his friend, telling him details about the base, who was all staying there, and even showed him pictures of some of the builds. Bard's friend grew jealous and wanted the coordinates for himself, not so that he could visit the base, but so he could use them as a bargaining chip to increase his own standing in the 2B2T community. He basically wanted to sell them out. This is where it gets insane. 60 days before the base was griefed, his friend slipped a USB flash drive into the back of Bard's computer while visiting him in real life and effectively ratted his PC. He obtained everything from Minecraft accounts to Discord logins. He had full access, so he removed the flash drive and kept this act a complete secret until just before the grief 2 months later. He had given the coordinates to the BSB in hopes of joining them and gaining clout from the destruction. When Bard saw his friend with the BSB, he would eventually discover what happened. When it became public that he had been ratted, the BSB actually kicked Bard's friend out of the group. If he was willing to betray his best friend in real life, he could easily do the same to them. Let it be known that if even a group of griefers doesn't want you in their ranks, you screwed up big time. This is why the base being griefed was such a shock to the 2B2T community. In the past, bases have fallen because of insiders leaking, or exploits being used to obtain coordinates, and yes, even Discord accounts being hacked. But stealing coordinates from a real-life friend just to sell them out had never happened before in such a major capacity. Considering this beautiful base started because of the theft of some in-game items, it's tragically ironic that it ended due to real-world theft. Remember folks, it's just a block game. If you enjoyed today's video, consider hitting that like and subscribe button. Also make sure to follow me on my socials, but that's it. Take it easy, Fit Fam, and stay alive out there.